I was thinking a little bit. I saw a thread on 4chan a while back about like cultural landmarks. The idea that like things are going by so quickly that games don't become iconic the way they used to, right? Games are coming out so quickly and people are moving on from them so fast that like it's difficult for any of them to find footing and for any of them to establish themselves as like cultural classics, something that everyone universally admits are good. And this is completely and objectively wrong, right? What's actually happening is that the gaming establishment does not want to admit when a game becomes a cultural landmark, right? They don't want to admit when a Nintendo game becomes extremely popular and talked about and becomes an innovator and an icon in the industry, the best in the genre. They will do anything they possibly can to not talk about it when it comes out and to refuse to talk about it, months after the fact, even after it accumulates like 40 million units in sales, right? Animal Crossing New Horizons sold like what, 20 million units that first year? Now it's like 40 million, one of the best games on Nintendo Switch. Animal Crossing New Horizons was a phenomenon in 2020. Like, everyone was playing it. It was a big deal. It was a huge hit. Everyone was talking about it. It loses Game of the Year to, like, The Last of Us Part 2 or something, right? All right, like the industry tried taking its tiny dick and slapping it across Animal Crossing's face. But what happened, right? What happened is that like people kept talking about Animal Crossing. People kept playing Animal Crossing. People kept buying Animal Crossing. And even though that technically it didn't win Game of the Year that year, it's remembered as like unofficially as the game of the pandemic, right? Right? It is a cultural landmark game, even if the industry doesn't want to admit it. And that is the real problem we're having with here, is that like the difference in taste between actual consumers and like paid propaganda shills, YouTubers, game journals, the industry, right, is like staggering. Like the shills are the people who are trying to convince you that The Last of Us Part 2 is a good game, that you should look forward to the multiplayer, that you should look forward to Part 3, that everything's fine at Naughty Dog, that Neil Cuckman is like a genius, that there's so much going on, like there's so much look forward to, like in gaming industry. Like right now, they're trying to convince you that 2023 is like one of the best years in gaming ever, right? Purely to try and sell you on like the PS5 and the Series X, right? Trying to convince you that the Switch is over and that these new consoles are going to take over very soon. Like they're trying to push things in that direction, right? But it's not going to work, right? Right? But much like what happened with Animal Crossing, Nintendo is going to succeed in spite of all of that. In spite of all of like the contempt that Breath of the Wild generated in its first year, with all the damage control, with all the rage, with all the attempts at downplaying the game, with saying that Horizon Zero Dawn was better, that Yakuza 0 was better, that Persona 5 was better, that Nier Automata was better, that like there were just so many other better games on PS4. Why would I ever care about a new Zelda game? Like after that, right? It failed, right? The attempts at downplaying Zelda failed, and they will fail going forward, right? The attempts at like downplaying Tears of the Kingdom have like just completely just bombed, right? There was no downplaying that game, right? Right now we're kind of doing this thing where we're pretending as if it's not Game of the Year, right? Like everybody wants to push for Baldur's Gate 3 instead. Like it's not going to work. Even if Baldur's Gate 3 wins, it's not going to be as well remembered as Tears of the Kingdom is, right? Like that's the reality. That's the reality of like the cultural landmarks, is that like no longer are the people in the industry, like game journalists, like a reliable source of information on what's good and what's popular. Instead, what they're trying to do is steer you away from good games and try to trick you into thinking that like The Last of Us isn't all bad, or that like Halo Infinite is good, or that like Overwatch 2 is worth supporting, or Diablo 4. Like no, like nothing, none of this is going to work, because in order to get people to like support your products, you're gonna have to get them to play your games. And unfortunately, The developers of Western studios, the people at PlayStation, like, they cannot produce anything to save their lives. There is nothing they can produce that can match Tears of the Kingdom. There is nothing they can produce that can match Super Mario Bros. Wonder. There is nothing they can produce that can match Detective Pikachu Returns, Pokemon in general, or like any of these other like big Nintendo Switch games coming out. Like, we're reaching the point where it looks like Super Mario RPG, a remake of a 1997 Super Nintendo game, which was not all that popular when it first came out, is probably going to outsell Final Fantasy 16. Right? That's how bad things have gotten for the industry, right? This is how bad things have gotten for the gaming establishment. This is how bad Nintendo is stomping the competition right now, where people would rather play a game from 25 years ago than the new shiny PlayStation 5 exclusive Final Fantasy game, right? That is how bad, how lowly people see these established gaming IPs, right? This is how far things have fallen. And right now, like, you're seeing a lot of people in denial about this, right? Like, I'm seeing a lot of people like in denial about like the decline in gaming. They're trying to convince themselves that like, oh, gaming isn't all that bad. People are exaggerating. I've been seeing a lot of people like try to create backlash towards the idea that like AAA Western games aren't as good as they used to be, and that like things are getting worse in gaming. And I really don't think that's a sentiment that's gonna last, because like all the indie games that people say that like you should play, they're all on Nintendo Switch. All the best games, all the best exclusives, all the best releases, period, they're all exclusives to Nintendo Switch. So it's a weird situation in which the industry wants you to believe that things are good, that games are better than ever, but they're not talking about the specific console developer that's making those better games, that's creating the better hardware, that has established a bright future for the industry, for the art form, for the medium of gaming, right? These guys are bending over backwards to try and pretend that Nintendo is on the way out, that the Switch is going to get replaced next year, and that we're probably not going to get that many games in like 2024 or something. Like, they are trying desperately to keep up the facade in order to keep getting those sponsorship deals, keep like promoting these advertisements, keep like pushing their woke ideology, keep doing anything other than talking about actual video games, right? That is the situation we're in now, where like the good games that come out, the stuff like Bayonetta 3, stuff like Metroid Dread, stuff like Octopath Traveler, stuff like Splatoon. Like, a lot of this stuff isn't talked about by the mainstream gaming media. Like, if you listen to these people, like, Splatoon is not that big of a deal. When you look at these people, like, Pokemon is in decline. When you look at these people, they'll try to tell you that like 2D Mario is not a mainstream Nintendo property, when it's like the Mario brand as a whole is like the biggest name in gaming, right? You really think that a traditional 2D Mario game isn't going to sell? That's like the most delusional thing I've ever heard in my life. Have you seen the sales for New Super Mario Bros. U on Switch? Like, it was crazy. Like, on Wii U as well. Like, I know people like bending over backwards trying to like justify those sales numbers. Like, oh, they're just bundles. Oh, they're just parents buying games for kids who don't actually play them. Oh, they're just this. But like, the reality is that like these games are really, really, really popular, right? Even if that is true, if that like this is the first game that a parent buys a child, like, this is a Mario game. Like, their first experience playing a Mario game is like a video game in general is going to be with Mario, and they're going to be fans of the brand. Like, they're going to buy the 3D games, they're going to buy Mario Sports, they're going to buy Mario Party, Mario Kart, like the new 3D Mario game. Like, even if in your hypothetical reality that 2D Mario is not a big deal, you can't downplay the rest of the IP. Like, you just can't, especially not the company that it's attached to. Like, it's a weird situation for sure. Like, it's really odd, like, seeing these people like do everything they can they possibly can to downplay every major Nintendo game that comes out. You know, Tears of the Kingdom got hit hard. You know, like so many people were calling it like a DLC or that like it wasn't a real sequel and stuff like that. And now they're trying to say it's been forgotten, which isn't true. Going into like Super Mario Bros. Wonder's release and the release of Nintendo Pikachu Returns, like you have people like saying those games aren't going to succeed, especially Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Like you have people like getting angry about them. Like you have people trying to tell you right now that Nintendo did not really announce a single new game at the last Nintendo Direct, which is just laughably wrong, right? Like you saw these people do this stuff. Like you've seen them how they treat like every single Nintendo game, right? Like, and it's getting sickening, honestly. Like, I really wish that more people would call these guys out on Nintendo Prime, RGT85, Arlo, out on their nonsense, right? This is something that really should be talked about a lot more. Right? The reason why games don't become cultural landmarks is because so much of the industry wastes time trying to pretend as if these games aren't good or that they aren't worthy of being talked about or that they aren't a big deal. And it takes a lot of time for them to become cult classics. Like you legit have to wait until the majority of the audience has moved on. Like Metroid Dread's a good example. Like Metroid Dread was really attacked and hated when it was first shown off by certain groups of people, but like when the game came out and became like popular and people liked it, like it slowly started becoming liked and well thought of. Ravenbeak is the best antagonist Samus has ever had, right? Like it became a cultural landmark for Metroid fans, right? Like you wouldn't have known that was going to happen if you like took David Jaffe's stupid video all that seriously, right? The entire industry is filled with people like that. And it is time to stop taking what they say about our Nintendo games, about our cultural landmarks seriously.